being here promptly. And with that, we'll start in with self-introductions. How about the people that are on Zoom?
Kathy Romer with the Commission and Vice Chair.
Eric Olson with the Commission.
Thank you.
Wendy Pratt with the Commission.
Thanks, Wendy. Okay.
Bill Lillibridge, Commission staff.
Good morning.
Loretta Strickland, Commission staff in it.
Good morning.
Harry Hobel-Heinrich with the Commission.
Morning, Terry.
Terry Trevish with Commission.
Rachel Eastnick with the Commission.
Okay.
Chantal Chapel Knowlton with the AG's office.
Morning, Chantal.
Rob Sepich, Legislative Services Office.
Thank you, Rob. Next.
We have one more person joining us.
Okay.
I don't know if they have audio up yet, though.
Okay. How about those in the office?
Terry Murison with the Commission.
Delwyn Tress with the Commission.
Crystal Rosen with the Commission.
Brenda Charles with the Commission.
And Joe Peterson with the Commission.
Okay, thank you. How about on the phone?
Chairman Wright, I believe that Jerry is the only one on the phone, and he introduced himself already.
Okay, thank you, Jerry. Thank you, Crystal. Do we have any else join us on Zoom?
Maureen Pepper for NRCS Idaho.
Oh, thank you, Maureen. Are you
Sure.
going to be representing Curtis today?
Sure.
Mr. Chair, I did get an email from Curtis, and he said he would be joining us about 10:30.
Oh, okay. Sounds like a plan.
Okay.
Okay. With that, how about roll call, Crystal?
Yes, sir. Chairman Norman Wright.
Here.
Commissioner Kathy Romer.
Here.
Commissioner Jerry Trevish.
Here.
Commissioner Eric Olson.
Here.
Commissioner Wendy Pratt.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay. So thank you for all being here. At this time, we have partner reports scheduled, but it appears that one of our partners, Curtis, won't be here for a while. Does anyone else have something that they would like to tell us about in the partner reports? Okay. Hearing nothing at this time. Agenda review. I don't believe we have any agenda changes. So moving on down, administrative report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A pretty brief report this time. Within it, I have a list of the activities that I've been involved in. They read pretty typically for this report. I also would like to highlight that I have submitted a written resignation effective June 11th, and that's within my administrator's report. We did meet, Chairman Wright, and Commissioner Romer, and I met with Nate Fisher and also our representative at DHR, and ironed out the process for identifying and hiring my replacement. Mr. Chair, I thought maybe you or Commissioner Romer might want to go into that with the group.
Well, Commissioner Romer, you probably took better notes than my memory. Do you have anything you'd like to add this time?
Well, I'll just give my comment, Chairman Wright, and then you can follow up because I thought it was an excellent meeting. I really appreciate the collaborative effort on behalf of the governor's office, and also, of course, you know, our HR representative has to be present. So I reported to a couple of districts down here that the commission will be involved in the interview process and also the final decision making along with advice from HR, as I stated earlier. So I just wanted people to know down here that we're not winging it. We're actively engaged with the powers that be, and I think we'll have a really good outcome.
Okay, I might just follow up a little bit. Nate told us that he recently assisted on the parks board for their hiring there, and they had about 50 applications. I don't know if we get that many or not, but what they Parks Board agreed to have him and HR do was go through all of the applicants and to weed out the ones that were not eligible, filled out the application wrong, but just didn't have the qualifications. And he said they were fairly what he called generous. In case of doubt, they left them in. And they did whittle a while from 50 down to 30. And then they gave those all to the commission to go through and review and figure out which ones they wanted to interview. So they did cut it down at least a ways. And I thought that, Kathy and I thought that would be a good process for us too. And then we can get down to the ones that have merit and that we would like to interview. And so we can go from there. Also, HR person, I just lost her name.
Haley Costin.
Yeah, Haley. She made comment that if we would like any assistance from her, she'd be more than happy to give it. And I made the comment that I think during the interview process, it might be good to have her there. She wasn't going to take a really active part. The only thing that she was going to do was just keep us, make sure that we don't ask inappropriate questions, you might say, and to make sure that we ask the same questions to all interviewees. So she's just going to try and keep it legal. She did offer to come up with some questions that we could ask, but she asked us that if we had questions after seeing maybe her list, to give them to her, and she'd find a way for us to make sure we could ask those questions to all interviewees. She says, I don't want to run this. And I said, we don't want you to run it. We just want you to keep us legal and to where we don't have any problems that way. And she said, I'll do whatever you would like. And I said, I thank you for that. So that's kind of where we left it at that time. Nate also offered to help whatever he could, but like I said, they're going to be doing the pre-review. Does anybody have any questions about that process?
Mr. Chair, could I add a couple of details?
Sure.
We have already submitted the announcement to DHR and should be posting that this week. Recruitment will last approximately 30 days. And so I would anticipate that at the June meeting, you might want to delegate a subset of the commission to work closely with DHR to work on those questions, if you like, or you may prepare to have full board meetings in June, multiple meetings to make sure that the entire board can weigh in on that. My intent is to bring you an agenda item. I recommend, Mr. Chair, that recruitment will be 30 days, and then there'll be a period of days for coming up with the refined list, and then interviews. The successful candidate has to accept and give notice wherever they are. So it could take as long as September, or maybe even mid-September, until there is a new administrator. sitting in the chair. So my recommendation is that in June, your board will consider appointing Delwyn Truffs, my deputy, as the acting administrator for the duration, however long it takes to identify that new person and get them on board. I think that was all I wanted to add to what Commissioner Romer and Wright have already shared.
Back to the interview questions. I definitely, all of you have probably done lots of interviews before. If you can start thinking about jotting down some ideas of questions between now and June, that would definitely be appropriate, because no matter who does the interview, if all of us don't wind up doing it, we need those questions from all of you so we can get your opinion in there to where we know what the answer is or how that would work out. So please, all of you, if you have ideas or thoughts, please jot them down, and we'll make sure we pass them on to Haley to where we can come up with those particular questions.
Mr. Chairman, Kathy Romer.
You bet.
Just a couple questions on when the announcement goes out. I know, Terry, you said it should be going out this week or next, did you say?
I believe this week. That was our target.
So we looked at the, I don't know what you call it, the synopsis or whatever, the job description, I guess, when you were first hired, and then that was going to be revised and updated, correct?
Correct. And we actually have done that and submitted it to DHR.
Okay.
I can just send you a copy of that if you'd like to see it. And
yeah, that's kind of where I was going with that,
okay.
You know, to the commission members, because really that might be a good place to begin to develop some questions in review of that application. So that was what I would like to have done. Everyone have a copy of that, and then have something to, you know, springboard from, I guess.
Commissioner Romer, if I could ask Mr. Chair to have Chantel weigh in, because it is something you will eventually be voting on. If she would prefer that delegate a small subset to work on that, or Chantel, if you could weigh in on that.
Hey, Terry, this is actually something I talked with Steve Strack in our office, and he's the legal counsel for Parks, because they just did this. I believe they did all the interviews in executive session during meetings, which is allowable, so the whole board could participate. I don't see issues with board members sending interview questions as long as they're just sending them to HR and not CCing all the commissioners on the emails, that kind of thing. Is there anything else specific you had a question on?
Well, I guess, Chantel, I would have the question, and there should be no issue with, I mean, it's public knowledge with the application going out. I was just suggesting that commission members be sure to have a copy of that. It might be helpful in developing, you know, your individual questions. It was really just kind of a courtesy that I was mentioning that. I know it would be helpful to me personally, so I just thought I would throw that out there, basically.
I don't see any issue with the commissioners having copies of the public posting.
Also, from a commission standpoint, if you have people that see the posting and you could have a copy of it, you can say, if you're interested, go put your application in. It's out there.
Mr. Chair, I think my question had to do with the board coming up with questions. If at some point the board does want to look at those questions and make a determination if the questions that are being asked are what the entire board wants, that would have to be done in an open meeting, I believe. And any sort of back and forth on those questions might be problematic.
Thanks, Terry. Sorry, this is Chantal. I'm sorry I have Ainsley with me because she's sick today. I missed that part. Yes, so if the commissioners are making a decision, that would have to be at a meeting. But I think that's easily resolvable with the way HR has set this up, where if you send the question to HR, she can be in charge of maybe reformatting and sending the full list of questions out and just have the discussion with her, not with the commission. Does that make sense?
It does, and Mr. Chair, what my plan will be is to send an email to all of you with the announcement and with Haley's contact information to submit
Okay, great.
to her so she can do that.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Along that same line, could we have Haley come up with her preset questions and send them out to us?
Yeah, I think I can ask her to do that. Sure, a starting point for you to.
Right, because then that'll trigger everybody else's mind just a little bit, saying, okay, I was thinking about that question there, and answers that, but I don't see a question, with this answer. So that's something that would really help us to find other questions we may want to ask.
Yes, and Kathy Romer again. My thoughts too are any legal framework that we have to follow to make sure that all the commission members are involved in the full process is the direction that I would like to go. I would like to keep it as a full board endeavor along with the assistance of HR, et cetera.
We will make that happen, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Okay. Does any of the commissioners have any questions or comments at this time? Okay.
So with that, Mr. Chair, this is a non-action item. I would only note that your next meeting on June 10th is an in-person meeting here in Boise. It will be my last meeting, and I would love to have the opportunity to thank you in person and give you a hug and all that, warm, feely stuff.
So I'm going to have to inform the board that I won't be able to make it to the in-person meeting in June. Sorry, Terry. My oldest son's going to be graduating, or it's his birthday that day, and my youngest son's graduation from 8th grade is that day, so I just won't be able to attend. But I can be on Zoom.
You'll be duly missed, Mr. Olson. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Anything else there?
Mr. Chairman, Kathy Romer, at what point do we make a decision to appoint Mr. or Delwyn?
Mr. Chair, it's not on the agenda this month. I intend to. Next month is when you typically delegate authorities to the administration.
Okay.
So my intent was to bring that forward to make it effective June 12th.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
June 10th.
Actually, I'm here through the 11th. Certainly, I'm to sit by and administrator for one day.
Right.
Okay. Okay.
Right.
Okay. Thanks, Terry.
Mr. Chair, I've included the National Association of State Conservation Agencies annual report. We pay our dues to the national organization that represents us with the partners. And so I thought you might be interested in what they did with our dues.
Okay. I'll just skip through it.
Just as information. That's it.
That's it?
That's it.
Okay. When's their next meeting?
Our next meeting is the 10th.
No.
I'm not sure. I haven't heard yet. It's usually in September or October is the annual conference. They did this last year virtually. I think it'll probably be in person this year, but I haven't heard where. Oh, I'm sorry. I have heard where. It's in Spokane. And so I'm sure that Delwyn will be happy to help you all make arrangements to go and be part of that. I think that Shanna Joy, who is, she was a counterpart in Alaska. She works for the Washington Commission. She's planned this. She's our regional rep this year and last year. So she will be putting on a great tour of something in the Spokane area. And it will be a good thing for all of you to make the trek. We also have not had our Tri-State Conservation Commission meeting for some time. So it's possible it would save us money to have some sort of gathering of the Washington, Oregon folks. If Oregon still has commission staff, they've lost 2 key people and kind of the program is not as robust as it was when we were doing our meetings. So maybe the NASCA meeting takes the place of that this year.
When's the date? You said it's this fall. You don't remember the date?
I do not. It's typically the last weekend of September, first week of October, and it starts on a Monday, Tuesday, which is when the state agencies get together, and usually on Wednesday, it opens up for conservation partners and people fly in from DC, and then there's usually a tour. So you can pretty much count on it occupying between Monday and Thursday if you're a staff person, and probably Wednesday through Thursday for board members.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. It's a really good opportunity, and I would encourage all of you commissioners to attend. People come from all over the United States. It's an opportunity to see. It was particularly helpful to me because when you're just in Idaho, to Idaho NRCS, you tend to think that everybody does everything the way that we all do it, but actually states are doing some different and innovative things, and you get ideas for new takes on the partnership just from speaking with your colleagues. Bill and Dylan, do you want to add anything to that?
No, just dittos to what you said, Terry. It was a really great opportunity the time we were able to join you at NASCA's annual meeting to just visit with people from different states and find out how they do stuff. And it was great.
Okay. Okay. So is that into your report, Terry?
That is, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else have questions for Terry at this time? Hearing none. Item 5 is Resource Conservation Rangeland Development Program. Mr. Hobel-Heinrich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me? Can everyone hear me before I get started?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, here too. If someone doesn't respond, I either they're not responding or they can't hear me. So.
I can hear you, Terry.
In the office, Terry.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Commissioners, Chairman Wright, I'm here to present an update as far as what we've been working on with Commissioners Pratt and Olson and myself as far as continuing that review of the loan program. The first thing I wanted to do is go through some loan statistics with you that I broke out to give you some background and some of kind of what has happened with the loan program. I think you may find it insightful. After that, we'll go into, I did a comparison of interest rates and then kind of some steps that we have yet to be completed and then some preliminary considerations. So let me start off first with the loan statistics. If I could direct you to page 17, there's a number of tables there, and if you could look on the upper left table, that is, as you can see, the first column is the fiscal years, 1988 through now. The second column is the number of loans that were written in that particular fiscal year. The third column is the total dollar volume of those loans. The last column is the average loan amount, just to kind of, you can see how the loan size has changed over time. Over that time period, and this includes 2021, the loans, I put in the loans that we approved in this fiscal year. Those aren't dispersed yet, but I'm presuming that they would be. So 560 loans, $29.4 million have been loaned out over that time period. I wanted to point out a couple of things you will see in the years 1999 through 2001. I've highlighted that in kind of a yellow, orange, or butterscotch. You can see those years as well as the year 2006 through 2008. The reason I highlighted those is there was a dramatic increase in the loan activity. That first time period, 99 through 2001, $5,153,000 was loaned out. And the second period, the 2006 through 2008, just under $9 million was loaned out. Essentially, all of the loan funds were loaned out. And that's why when you see 2009, the loan activity dropped dramatically. Well, they simply had to stop making loans because they didn't have any cash left to loan out. So if you look down at the bottom of that that particular table, the average number of loans written in any particular year is 16, and the average dollars loaned out per year is about 865,000. So it can vary quite a bit from the very first year at 128,000 to the high in 1988 to in 2006, $3.9 million was loaned out. Quite a variation. The next table I'd like you to look at is in the upper right. I broke out the loan amounts by type, and it's really kind of a loan amount range there. So in the first and the second columns there, you have it's the brackets. So we've got them essentially $10,000 increments in the first two columns. So we go from the smallest loan ever written was $3,400. And in that column, up to $10,000 on the second column. The number of loans written in that range was 22, and that represented and then in the fourth column is the 4% of the loans were written that way. So you can see the number of loans that were written, and there's the most number of loans was from 50,000 to 60,000 to 59,999. There's 119 loans are written, representing 21% of the loans. Keep in mind that in the early years, the loan limit was, I believe, $50,000, and then over time they increased that. And I don't have records on just when and what the exact amounts were, but I think it went from 50,000. There was a point there where it went to 100,000, 125,000. Many of you know that we had it at 200,000 for a number of years, and of course now recently with the rule change, we are at $600,000 for a maximum loan amount. The median loan was really just under 15,000, the median loan size. And actually, of those loans, 60,000 and less, that accounts for 72% of the loans. And actually, from 110,000 and larger loans, that represents 5.4% of the loans. There's just very few loans written in those larger loan amounts. The next chart I wanted to go over with you is the one just below that. That's where we broke out all the loans in terms. We had a term as short as 1.2 years and as long as 18 years. And in the second column, you see the number of loans that had those terms. And then in the third column is the percentages, the percent of the total loans that particular term represented. So in that table, I highlighted 4 different years. The years loan term of 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, and 15 years. And you can see those totaled, the ones in yellow or butterscotch, whatever, account for 85% of the loans. So the vast majority of them are in that time period. And that'll correlate to what I've done later. I'll explain later when we get into the comparing interest rates. So The next table I wanted to point to is directly below that is interest rate comparisons. And in that first column, you'll see interest rates as low as, we wrote as low as 2% and as high as 6%. Of course, we are limited by statute to loans. Interest rates cannot exceed 6%. In the second column, we see the number of loans that relate to the particular interest rate. And then in the third column, again, that's the percentages of the total loans that interest rate represented. So again, I've highlighted down at the bottom of that interest rates of 4%, 5%, and 6%. Those loans, and most of the loans were written in those interest rates, and those represent 75% of all loans were loans with that interest rate. Now, I've been working for the commission since about 2010, and all of the loans that I've been involved with that we've had since 2010 have all been between 2% and 3.5%. So most of the high interest loans that were written were prior to 2010. And as I've stated before, when we were in a low interest rate environment in the last 10 to 12 years, that's what's resulted. We've lowered that interest rate, but still we haven't written that many loans compared to previous years. So now what I'd like you to do is to shift to the left of page 17 there. There's two more charts. The first one there is where we're comparing all the loans written, and we sorted them by division. So on the left column, you see divisions 1 through 6 for all the districts, and you see the number of loans that were written in those districts over the life of the loan program. And the next column over is the amount funded. That's the total dollars that were loaned out, sorted by district. And then the fourth column, or just to the right of that, is the percent of loans that of the 560, what percentage that division represented, or how many loans were in that division. And then the last column to the right is the percentage of dollars loaned. So just a little more slicing and dicing on that. You see I highlighted Division 4, and 347 loans, or 62% of the loans that the loan program has written have been in Division 4, and $17.25 million have been loaned in Division 4. That represents 59%. So the vast majority of the loan activity has been in Division 4. In fact, the next closest division is Division 6, which is less than 1/4, which is less than 1/4 of the entire loan volume. And the other thing to note, I mean, Division 1 up in North Idaho, we've had a single loan written. So it's quite a wide range of variance of which districts, which divisions have participated in the loan program. But in the next chart just below, you'll see probably a good explanation why. I took all the different projects and had to do a little bit of recategorizing because over time they call things differently. But you can see the different types of projects, from CAFOs and irrigation, grazing, drill, rangeland, riparian. That's the type of projects. Again, the number of loans in the second column, number of loans that fit that particular type of project or description. And the third column, the dollars that were loaned based on that type of project. Fourth column, the percent of loans that were in that project. And the last column to the right, the percentage of the dollars loaned. So I highlighted irrigation in there. 512 of the 560 loans are tied to irrigation or some type of a water related, it related to irrigation. It wasn't riparian or anything like that. It was just, it had to do with irrigation and pipelines and things like that. Over 90% of the loan portfolio, whether you count number of loans or dollars funded or dollars loaned, is irrigation. And it's really, I mean, we've known it was skewed that way, but it's just a huge percentage is irrigation. And that presumably would explain why Division 4 and also Division 5 and 6, well, and 3 as well, that would account for the vast majority of the irrigation there. So at this point, commissioners, I've gone through a lot of slicing and dicing of that, and I've got a little bit more to go, but does anyone have any questions as to what I've displayed, or do you have any questions at this point for me?
I have none.
None here, just great information so far. Thanks, Jerry.
Okay. You know, I forgot to mention, with Commissioners Olson and Pratt, if there's something that I've missed or something that you want to add or comment, please, you know, interrupt me and add your comments as well. So, so again, I'll just kind of last call. If anybody has any questions or comments, I'll move on. So, okay. Hearing none, let's move to page 18, the next page. A lot of this is repeated. Part of it, there was a method to my madness to kind of help put it in front of you as we looked at the main component of this page 18 is the table to the left. What we've got is we sorted the loan activity by district. So the first column is we've got all the districts listed. The second column is the number of loans that were written that were in that particular district. And the third column, the dollars that were loaned in that particular district. And then the last column is the division that that district is in. And then I sorted all of that loan volume. I sorted that table by the third column, the amount funded. So you see at the very top there, Balanced Rock, there were 94 loans written in that district totaling $4.8 million, $4,851,000. And that accounts for, you know, pretty significant amount of the funds. And the next closest district is Gooding at 2.4 million. And so and of course, Northside at 2.1 million. We've got a number of districts that were between 1 and 2 million, you know, Wood River, Twin Falls, Snake River, Franklin, Bruno River, and Jefferson. And then from then on down, it just declines into the, you know, continues on down to where at the districts where there actually was not any loan activity over the life of this program. That includes Teton, Clearwater, Benawah, Bonner, Kootenai-Shoshone. And also related to that, districts that had a single loan are Camas, Ada, Central Bingham, Adams, and Squaw Creek. So there's just ON boundary. So really we've had 45 districts that have participated to where there were loans in their district, 5 that did not. And so, but I'd also point out to you is if you look on that division, and remember I said that Division 4 had the vast, a very significant amount, 62% of all loans, or 59% of all dollars loaned. And you can see in that table that the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the first 7 districts are from Division 4. And there's just a lot, of course, again, when there's all irrigation or a lot of irrigation, 90% of the dollars loaned out are for irrigation. You can see those are districts where there's a tremendous amount of irrigation. Just kind of anecdotal, it's kind of interesting. You look at the 4th column down at the Minidoka district and, you know, $1.9 million. I believe in the 11 years I've been here, I've written 1 loan in Minidoka County. So, you know, there are situations where I believe there was a lot of activity in a particular county. You know, maybe there was a lot of conversions to pivots, and then that seems to have subsided. Now, whether that's still going on and we just aren't participating in that, I don't really know, but, or maybe all the conversion has occurred, but just kind of an anecdotal aside on some of those, you know, for example, like I said, Minidoka really haven't, I think we've written one loan in there in the last 12 years. So that's kind of the slicing and dicing as far as with the loan program. You can kind of see where the activity has occurred and might give you a perspective, just a little more background on kind of what has happened with that loan program. Does anyone have any questions for me at this point? Or comments?
No, you're doing good, Terry. Keep going.
Okay. Well, I'll keep going. So the next part that I wanted to, that's kind of it for the loan statistics, kind of the data behind that. I'd like to go in and do explain that the other thing I spent a fair amount of time on was a comparison of Treasury and RCRDP interest rates. Now, what's behind this is what we wondered is with our loan program, how did the RCRDP loan rates compare to the market, to other choices that those producers had? Now, as you noted, we've mentioned at times kind of what interest rates are. We don't really have a place where we can go back 30 plus years and look at the at commercial lenders' interest rates, ag credit or farm credit. We don't have that record. We've got some information, but it's really not very detailed, and it's very intermittent. Or if they did collect it in the past, I haven't seen it written down anywhere. So what I wanted to do was compare it. So I used a proxy. I went on the internet and found the U.S. Treasury notes rates. They go back to 1990, and they've got them a variety of terms. And I picked, remember those term loans on that one chart where most of our loans were written either 5 years or 7 years or 10 years or 15 years. And so I selected the Treasury interest rates back to 1990 for those years. Now, there isn't a 15-year Treasury note. I used a 20-year Treasury note. So it's not an exact comparison there, but it's still, it's an indicator. The other thing to note is on the 20-year notes with the Treasury, those haven't been available for some of those years. Some of them they just went from 10 years to 30 years. So there are some gaps that are missing, but I still think that what we've worked up here will prove informative for you. So what I did is I took all those interest rates from the Treasury on those different terms, and I put them in a table, and I didn't present that because it was might be a little hard to follow. And then in another column, I put the RCRDP rates. And what I did is these rates are of actual loans that were written. So, all the 5-year loans, all the 10-year loans, 7 and 10 and 15-year loans. And what I did is I calculated the difference. And what I wanted to see was, assuming that the Treasury rates were a proxy for what the market was, where did our RCRDP loan rates stand? Were they above the market? Were they below the market? To just kind of get an indication of that. And I also, so you see the first chart here on the 5-year loans. I've got on the left-hand side are interest rates. You see 1 through 9, but our rates are, our RCRDP loan rates are limited to 6%. And those are, RCRDP rates are represented by the orange line. And the blue line is the Treasury rate. And on the gray bars are the loan volume for that year. And on the right-hand side of this chart, this graph, you'll see dollar amounts, and that gives you the dollar amounts of the particular loan. So you see that one at the very top, the highest one, that was the year 2000, I believe it was 6, where we loaned almost, or maybe it was 2007, I have to look at that. It was almost $4 million. So, so there's three different things that are graphed and charted. So before we get too far, Commissioner Pratt had asked a good question there, said, why is the orange line not continuous? You know, there's gaps in it. Well, there are some years where we simply didn't write 5-year loans. We wrote other loans that had different terms, but not 5-year loans. So if you look at the orange in this particular, on the 5 years, you see on the far right there, it just kind of stops about 2012, 2013. That's where we changed our interest rates to where our lowest rate went out to 7-year terms. So obviously if people could go to 7 years, they didn't choose 5 years. And so it isn't that we did stop making 5-year loans. They just chose 7-year loans in there. So that's why there are gaps in there. So what I'd like you to do is, I'm not going to go through every single year because a lot of the concepts are the same. I mean, you can look through those, but if you could turn to page 21, which is the 10-year loans, I'll just pick one of them, and let's kind of go through that and see. What we see there is in the very left there, about 1990. Again, I didn't have Treasury data for 88 and 89, but that's okay. There wasn't a lot of volume anyway. You can see the Treasury rate was at 8.5%. Excuse me. And the loan rate, all loans were fixed at 5% at that point in time. So at that point, the loan program had substantially lower rates than what we would, the Treasury rate, than what we might consider market rate. And they stayed low for a number of years. In fact, through 1997, when they finally reversed. So at the point where what we are learning is that when the orange line, that our loan rates are below the Treasury, we are very competitive with other banks, that we can encourage conservation. Now, this isn't a perfect graph of a correlation, but generally what we're seeing here is that when the orange line, when our loan rates are below the Treasury rates, below the market rates, we see an increase in loan activity. And when our loan rates, or the orange line, is above the Treasury rate or above the blue line, then we see a decrease in loan activity. We just aren't as competitive. So you can see in that year, about 1997, 1998, where the orange line is above the blue line, and you see the loan volume, the bar down below has dropped dramatically, where we just loaned, it looks like it was in the 400,000 range. There's a point where we dropped the rates from 6% back down to 5%, and the Treasury rate went up. And at that point, that's that time period of 1999 through 2001 where our loan volume increased. And you see the one year where we loaned just under 2.5 million in the year 2000, I think it was 2001. I have those in front of me. Yeah, the year 2000, we loaned just under 2.5 million. And the 1999 and 2001, we loaned about 1.2 and 1.5 million. So loan activity increased. Then you see where the Treasury rates continued down, and now the orange, our loan rates, are above the Treasury rates. And that continued down through about 2000, I think it was about 2005. So since now the Treasury rates are less than our loan rates, you see the loan volume dropping back down to, just above 500,000. And you can see this trend, how it continues. We got into that time period where our rates dropped below in the year 2006 and 2008. I mean, it wasn't wasn't exact, but it shows pretty close correlation, where our rates dropped below and then our loan volume increased a lot. And those are the 3 years, 2006, 7, 8, when we loaned out essentially $9 million, and that 1 year of 3.9. So now treasuries dropped below that after that, 2009, 10, 11. And of course, the last 10, 12 years, those treasury rates have been quite low. I mean, we've had them down at 1 to 3%, and our loan rates have been sitting, at least for the 10 year, been sitting around 3%. And as you see, our loan volume dropped. There's one exception there in the year 2018 where we just peaked above. Actually, the treasury rates went up a little bit, and ours stayed more or less the same. And we saw another little blip up where we increased loan activity almost to $1 million. So you can go through these different loan terms, the 5 years, the 7, the 10, the 15, and you can study that, and you can see that generally when our rates are higher, it really correlates higher than the treasury, higher than competitors, that our loan volume drops. And in fact, the last 10, 12 years, that may be very well explain, or at least be a significant contributor to the fact that our loan volume hasn't been there. I mean, obviously there are other factors, but this would point to that. The thing is that to actually have competitive rates, if we were to, I did another comparison of, and I didn't chart this, but I compared 10-year blocks of time. The first one was where we had all that loan activity from those two different groupings of 3 years, where there's a whole bunch of loan volume in the middle of this chart. And then the last 10 years or so, or maybe it was 12 that I compared. And generally, when with those lower rates, again, we just had a lot more loan activity, and then we still didn't have loan, when we were more expensive, then we didn't have the loan activity. And so the question became, how much lower would we need to be? And I didn't chart this, but generally it seemed like there were times where the loan rates could be easily 0.5%, if 1 or 1.5% below what the market rate was. Well, now our interest rates are so low that we can't go that low. I mean, we can only go to 0, which we've discussed before is not really a palatable choice or solution. But we're bumping up against those low rates and the 0 rates. And so the question that came out in our discussions with Commissioner Pratt and Olson and myself is, what do we do about that? I mean, we could lower the rates, and of course, we're trying to pay for the program with interest income, but if we keep them where they are, we aren't loaning much, and then we earn interest from the cash, which is at 0.4%. But if we lowered them, then I guess we would presumably loan out and finance some conservation, which is what the program is for. But of course, our interest income, we wouldn't earn much from those loans. And so we're really caught between, what do we do there? Because either way, if the commission were to choose, one or the other, or it's just that there's low interest rate for it. So, but one way, at least there would be conservation for it. We could point to projects, but if we have interest rates at 1% or less, then that things would change. That's for sure. So let me go back. Commissioners Olson and Pratt, is there anything I missed or that you wanted to point out or emphasize or comment on? Or did the commissioners have any questions of what I presented so far?
No, I really don't, Terry. I think you've covered it. I would say go ahead and finish what you had.
Okay. Okay. Well, there's just a couple of other things that what we're trying to do. We had discussions. We've talked about marketing, and we're still studying that more. I know Commissioner Olson was going to be checking to see, kind of learn more about commercial rates again, to see if we can get some actual loan rates. And that's the thing is Commissioners Pratt and Olson, as producers, can check on things a little more easily than me as an agency and potential. I just don't know that a commercial bank's going to share their interest rates with me, but they might with the commissioners because they're producers. Also, we talked about having Representative Youngblood look at the program, and we're in the works with that to get that set up. As you probably know, Representative Youngblood is a banker and could provide some insights into our program. One thing I did want to mention, as far as with the rates that we gathered, I talked to other people, just again, this is kind of anecdotal, but talked to an FSA loan officer, and their 7-year rates right now, and their operating loans, they're 1.75%. So someone can get, assuming they qualify under FSA guidelines, a 1.75% loan. Their 40-year mortgages, which, of course, we don't get involved with that far out, but they're at 3.25%. I did have one staff person say they talked to a producer that claimed that they could get a pivot loan through a dealer at 1.5%. So I can't confirm that amount or when that occurred, but I've just heard of some pretty low rates. The Treasury rates, were real low this, like 6 months ago or so. They've come back up, but it's anecdotal to suggest that the rates are quite low, and when we're sitting, our lowest rate is 2.5%. That might explain some of that reasoning for that. So I've talked about there as far as with the kind of preliminary recommendations that we're talking about. A lot of discussion about the interest rates as far as being compatible, possibly having project-specific rates, to encourage particular types of activity. There's a lot of discussion as far as broadening the marketing efforts. We talked about Zoom meetings with districts and connecting with NRCS. I know I had a conversation just with work where I had an inquiry and was talking to a Idaho Power rep, and I've tried for years to try and connect with them. And I explained to this particular ag rep about the loan program, and he asked some good questions. I sent him some information, and so there can be some leads there too. So along with that marketing, there's some ideas about promoting loan program at some new conferences, which I've always been interested in. Commissioner Olson had mentioned the Tri-State Grain Growers in North Idaho, which again, we can find some new ways to do that. But that's kind of where we are now. There may be some more avenues or directions that we take at this time, but that's what we've studied so far. So again, does anyone have any questions or comments? Commissioners Olson and Pratt, if you wanted to add something as well, please do so.
So I'll weigh in. So I was looking at our own loan fact sheet, and it goes through it pretty well. It talks about the interest rate, the collateral required, and the terms. How long are we going to give you to pay this back? What collateral value are we going to ask for? And of course, that's the main thing. But then you also have the process, and are they going to feel comfortable calling the commission and talking with Terry over the phone, having this remote, and go through the process of the conservation plan and the extra paperwork that we require? I don't know how in your world, but it seems to me that there's more banks in my hometown. They just keep building them. And then we have Ravel Finance and equipment dealers and this kind of off-site lending efforts going on. It's just so competitive right now. We're really highly leveraged, I think, in agriculture. And so our local bank or a farm credit institution that we go to, they'll have the operating line, they'll have most of your collateral already tied up. They'll also be easy to access. They're familiar with your operation. You don't have to go through a lot of hoops to get money. So if we can't offer a really attractive rate, I just don't think folks will bother. Is this, there's also marketing. I mean, if it's a great rate, are we getting the word out? So when Terry came up with these, how like Division 4 had this huge number of loans, we ask a lot of questions. Is it somebody on staff maybe within our CS? There was a certain push for a certain program that got the word out. Why is that really? I mean, there's lots of other divisions that have irrigation. So I don't know. The more you look at it, the more questions you ask. But I really think it's a whole package. It's a great start, what Terry's got. I think we need to keep working on it. But I really want to look at the rate. I really want to continue to think about marketing. I think we can come up with something that's more attractive, but it's a competitive world out there, I'll tell you, in the ag lending realm. Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, I would just echo everything Wendy just said. I know Jerry's on today. I kind of wanted to pick his brain and see, since he hasn't had the opportunity to really weigh in on any of this, and he is our resident banker on the board. So what do you think, Jerry?
Well, it's probably, I've been retired for about 10 years now, and it's, I just read the paper and look at all the banks, like Wendy said, they're even opening that banks you never even heard of, and then banks that, a lot of the banks that are opening, they're not, a lot of them aren't agriculture oriented, but I don't know, it's really competitive, and the only way you can match them is that lower your standards, and we don't want to do that. I mean, we've got to keep a clean slate and not be loaning money just to anybody. So it's really competitive, and I think in certain instances, if you're a real strong borrower, I think that you can probably maybe reduce the rate somewhat, but you can't reduce it a lot. So I don't know the answer. It's very competitive, and I just think we have to look at these deals one at a time and see if we can make some adjustments on rates and you know, additional collateral, etc. But anyway, that's my take.
Yeah, I think I understand that aspect of it too. And I think, you know, looking at the surprise to me is I already knew that most loans were, you know, basically for irrigation stuff. And my comment to Terry when we were on this call before was the fact that up in my end of the state, you know, we really don't know about this program, and we don't really know about the financing that's available through our CRDP. And I don't know if it's because it's not really geared the right way towards it, but after looking into the loan program and seeing all the different avenues that there are available for conservation projects or getting into buying a no-till drill, I noticed one of them was from my district, and I'm pretty sure I remember who it was from, and it was for purchase of a no-till drill. I just think that we need to look at the rates, and I think that, like Jerry just said, I think that we could maybe just gear them towards this particular individual that's wanting to set up a term. I just don't know what the best way to go about advertising that, to say, well, yeah, we'll look at what you have, and if you're really good, we'll probably offer you something a little bit better than what we're advertising. So how do we go about doing that without opening up the floodgates into just anybody coming in and changing the standard so drastically that we get ourselves into a bad situation with defaults? So it's a double-edged sword. So
a lot of it looks like to me, a lot of these districts they're not loaning money, and do they really understand the program, or do they want to be bothered with making loans? That kind of concerns me. I mean, his presentation, Terry's presentation, is pretty top heavy on far as who wants to who's getting the money. I mean, there's like 5 districts that are loaning all the money, and the rest of them, I don't know what they're doing. They must not, either they don't want to understand it, or they don't have the demand. And I think maybe we should research that a little bit. Maybe we can get some of these districts that aren't loaning money to educate them to loan more money. Anyway, just a thought.
One thing, Chairman, comes to my mind, listening to Eric talk about the possibility or contemplating providing or offering reduced rates for excellently qualified applicants or that kind of thing. I think we have to be pretty careful, or it would seem to me we would, about being as this is a public agency and that kind of thing, about cutting sweetheart deals with folks. And that's just something that came to my mind. The other thing was, well, Terry was going through this great historical information and kind of seeing some of the correlations between the market rates and our rates and that kind of thing, and how that really does look like there's a fairly important correlation between that and the amount of loan activity. But looking specifically then at the irrigators, why is it that irrigators, even at any time in the history of the program, have been attracted to our loan program dollars, whereas, I don't know, alfalfa seed producers, beet producers, sugar beet producers, timber producers, the other sectors of ag have not apparently been as attracted to it? That I'd be really curious to hear if anybody has a perspective on that.
Well, I wonder if it's because of, irrigation. I don't want to say it's kind of a niche market, really. I think that, you have certain areas that are geared towards. I mean, that's the difference between my end of the state and your guys' end of the state is, you guys are taking water in and we're taking it out up our way. I think that, I wonder if there was not a lot of interest in the banks at those particular periods of times because they didn't know about it or didn't understand it. And now that they've kind of relaxed their qualifications as to what they need to have to, to be approved for a loan, I think that has made them more competitive, where, the RCRDP program was kind of geared towards that already. And I mean, there is a direct correlation between the difference in the rates and the number of loans and the amount loaned out. But going back to my earlier point about, or Delwyn's point about the sweetheart deals, I thought I remember some talk about they got into trouble with that back in the 2000s from the legislature with different loans, kind of cutting rates and doing things that were not part of statute and whatnot. the gorge. So that's another part, you know, that's the other part that really you have to be careful with. I think the biggest thing, the best thing that we could do is to really look at rates. But to get the word out, and that's why I told Terry, I said, you need to really start focusing on, you know, not so much the district, maybe try and tie in with NRCS with our partnership there a little bit more. I don't know if they're completely aware and all the districts up there or throughout the state of this program, but also getting involved with, say, Idaho grain producers. And that's why I suggested the Tri-State Grain Convention up in Spokane or wherever it's going to be this year, just to get the word out. I just think that we just need to have a little bit better advertising on the program availability, and, you know, but I think we really need to look at our rates and, you know, try to be as competitive as we possibly can be.
You know,
Commissioner
all
Wright?
those are good comments. And I still think one of our, you know, where we get a lot of our loans is off of EQIP. That seems to be very popular. If we could by chance get the legislature to agree to move some of our funds from loan program over to WAPA and then, you know, use that as a cost share, then people say, well, if you need additional loan, you're right here, is the CDP program, loan program, we can tie back into. That might be still a good avenue.
Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Curtis has submitted a comment which I'll read. Says NRCS is focusing on our underserved customers and communities more so. Perhaps these customers of ours would have a greater need for the loan program.
Good point. Good point.
Thanks,
Chairman Wright?
Yes, sir.
The one thought with the, to elaborate a little bit more on the project specific, what I've done in my past life with lending and government, with staff, and this could be our staff, it could be the districts, could be NRCS, but they would come up with particular projects or types of things that they're trying to focus on and encourage. And Commissioner Olson, just like you talked about with North Idaho, are there certain things that those districts are trying to do, and then we look at it and see if and how the loan program could play a role in helping them implement that conservation. I'll give you a quick example, and I hadn't said anything to Terry Morrison or to Delwyn or the staff yet, but for example, there's a soil health field day that's coming up here, I think in a couple of weeks. Well, one of the things they're going to focus on is someone has tried strip till with sugar beets. Well, the thought, I'm sitting there going, well, gee, if that's something that would work, and if there's some special equipment needs, could the loan program play a role in encouraging implementation of that with sugar beet producers? And it's that specific detail, and we can try that if we find something. And then, of course, like I said before, we can change a program and then we can wait and see if something happens. But it's more intensive, but that might allow where we are asking our partners, you know, what types of things are important in your district, and is there something that we can do, something that we're missing? I mean, it's a program and it's a tool, and you know, not everything works, but still we could ask and see if there's we can broaden the appeal of the program to get more conservation on the ground. So.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chairman, this is Kathy Romer. I have a couple questions, you know, just to clear some things up in my mind, I guess. If I may, sir, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So, Jerry Hobel-Heinrich, the bottom line, though, is interest rates, correct? Is that truly the bottom line? I mean, how cheap is money?
Commissioner and Chairman Wright, I believe that's a huge factor in it. Yeah. I think it seems that we've had all these steps before, conservation plan and all that, but they wrote those loans. They wrote $4 million of loans in 1 year. They still had those requirements. I don't think it was that different from what we have now. So I really think it's interest rates that the producer will overlook the extra steps involved, just like they will participate with EQIP. They'll go through those extra steps in order to achieve, to get that project installed and get the lower rate or get the EQIP, the grant or whatever. So.
Okay, so when you say overlook those steps, if our money is cheaper and the process may be a little more lengthy, those are the steps that you're saying that, in your opinion, the producer would overlook to get the cheap money.
Yes, yeah. But in other words, they have to have a conservation plan. Be ranked by the district. Just all those things involved. Whereas, their operating lender doesn't care about a conservation plan. It's they walk in and say, I want a loan for a pivot or whatever, or drill or whatever it is, and they just go do it, and they ignore all those other steps. They don't need to do those.
So that was actually my next question, because Commissioner Pratt did mention something about process, and I'm assuming, Commissioner Pratt, I don't want to speak for you, but I'm assuming what you meant was just what Terry mentioned, is that we require more time to fill out the paperwork based on this and that and the other thing. So what if our interest rates can't be competitive currently, and I don't believe they are or can be, is that a correct statement, Terry?
I would, to the best of our knowledge, and Commissioner Pratt, I know you had checked with a producer, or a lender, but I believe we are either above or equal to other lenders. So it's
okay. And so I think you made the comment, how low can you go, really? So that's the issue. So in the process, can be changed, I guess, or addressed to be more attractive. So that would be the next place I would go, is how can we streamline the process? And we've had this discussion before, I think, because the process is controlled by statute to some degree too. Is that correct?
Commissioner, and Chairman, and the rules. Yeah. So
yeah. Okay.
Really, the rules.
Okay. So that puts us back to.
Although we just changed those rules, but there's still,
right.
To where it gave us more flexibility. But as Commissioner Trebish said, I mean, there's a point of, the standards of how, if you cut your standards or you cut your steps. I mean, to give you a perspective, I had a producer call me about a pivot loan, and they quoted him a really high rate. In fact, it was so high I found it almost hard to believe. He talked like, I thought he said 8%, which I didn't even think they had those. But the point was, he said it was about like a half page or page application. He was shocked at how little information they wanted, and they made a decision, and he was approved. But he was like, I want to pay the rate, but the process, right. I mean, they went through it so fast. And, of course, I'm not suggesting we go to that by any means, but it gives you an idea of how much the corners are cut. The FSA loan officer that I spoke with, she worked with FSA, and then she went to work for Farm Credit, and then she came back to FSA. And her comment was that Farm Credits, that there's a lot of things there were things that they did not look at that she, as part of FSA, did. And so she was essentially instructed, don't look at that. You don't need that. So there's steps that lenders are cutting out. But as Commissioner Trebish knows, there are times where lenders, they ease up on their standards. It's like a pendulum swing. And then when things don't go so well and they have more delinquent accounts, then the pendulum swings the other way, and then they tighten their standards. And that's just,
Well, I guess I was just trying to walk through it, you know, after hearing what I've heard, and then also being walked through the presentation that you made. And by the way, I want to commend Commissioners Pratt and Olson for instigating this process and bringing, which Terry, you brought forth this very good analysis. I really appreciate that. It's been helpful. But really, okay, so it's interest rates, then it's process, and then probably, you know, I'm thinking three things. The next thing is the marketing. And we've discussed all of those things during this time. But we've also had this discussion in my time as a commissioner, the very same discussion. And so the two things that we really are kind of bound by are the interest rates, so to speak, as the bottom line. Next is the process, which we are bound by to a large degree on the rules, which in order to streamline those is a process for us through the legislature, and we just did go through that. So that's quite lengthy as well. So the last thing hanging out there is really the marketing. And that's in my mind. And based on what we've learned, I think that's probably it. So, and you, Terry, have brought forward to the commission in the last several years different ways of advertising and marketing. And those have been like in certain publications, we've done that. And I don't know, a couple other things. And so,
well, conferences.
Yeah. So, and part of the reason, and I would go on just a little bit more and then I'll quit, but part of the reason I think in Division 4, you know, and it's been quite some time ago that those loans were made, I think, to that high degree, of course, is the irrigation in the Magic Valley, the Southern Idaho region, and the switch, you know, I think you called it conversion from gravity to sprinkler, which was a major thing down here. But the other thing too, I think, and when I looked at the districts in Division 4, a lot of these guys are whether they were made in-house, you know, with the supervisors doing the borrowing, or those connected, if you will, pretty directly with districts and people who know how that whole system works. They're pretty savvy about that, and they know how to make use of the state agency and what it offers. And I think that would be including, of course, the RCRDP loan. So I think that's a factor as well. You know, I found in my experience with some of these districts in Division 4, most of them, they're pretty plugged in, you know, to what they're doing and what is offered. Not saying that others aren't, but the loan program with the irrigation and whatnot has made it more amenable or accessible to them. So I guess I would just like to hear maybe from Commissioners Pratt and Olson and also Terry, did you discuss additional marketing steps or strategies that have not been utilized yet that might pull in potential customers? That's a long way to get to this question, but that's what I'm wondering. Because I see that as the only low-hanging fruit really that's left that would be implemented readily. Let's put it that way.
So let me weigh in on that. This is Wendy. I don't think that we could say, oh, we can't look at process. I think we can continue to look at process. Okay. Or we can't go any lower on interest rates. I mean, I think we can. We're earning 0.4% right now. I mean, what if we said, and I think this needs to be kind of a brainstorm thing, but maybe we're going to go for, we're going to say there's a rate of 1% for minimum tillage types of equipment. And then you have something that Terry could actually go to a district meeting with or a division meeting with. And maybe with Zoom meetings being offered, that's something Terry can do more of. Maybe we talked about some working with the staff that attend those district meetings, like a Brian Reed, and maybe Brian doesn't take his time that month, but but Terry takes a few minutes. So yeah, I think I think looking at rates is still good. I think we still process and we look again at marketing. But I don't just think going out and marketing the same old program that's about the same as you can get from a farm credit institution. I don't think that's kind of beating a dead horse, I think.
So we need to come up with some nuances, and I appreciate that, some nuances or something new to offer to make it attractive, and then market that.
That's the way I see it.
Okay. Thank you.
I kind of like Curtis to weigh in. He's throwing some comments out there that are interesting.
Go ahead, Curtis.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. No, great discussion from everyone, and I see value in the loan program. And as you know, NRCS, we provide anywhere from 50% on up to 90% cost share towards conservation practice implementation. But there still leaves that 10%, 25%, whatever on the shoulders of the landowner in coming up with that money on their own. And perhaps this program, can serve a purpose for those. That's why I mentioned the underserved communities and customers and such like that. The people that we may not always be aware of out there that are needing assistance. How do we reach out to them people? And we're trying to identify where these underserved communities are within the communities as well, and in helping them out. How many Black farmers, how many Asian farmers, how many Hispanic farmers that don't even know about our programs that we have available for them, including this loan program as well. So I think we have some work to do on our marketing strategy, as someone brought up as well, in getting the word out there on the street. We also have, I mentioned here, some, erosion remains to be a serious issue in our state. And we are currently developing a new strategy going forward to incentivize our conservation practice implementation, not just to the Farm Bill program participants, but even those who are not currently participating in the Farm Bill program right now seem to be, some of the people who are really contributing towards more of the wind erosion issues that are going on, the people who are not part of the Farm Bill program. So there may be some opportunities there perhaps to incentivize this to the maximum in loans and in other measures, I guess, to get conservation on the ground as much as possible. And then also I mentioned, I know for a fact that our dairy producers in the Magic Valley are needing to update and either establish new lagoon liners or just new lagoons in period. There's some issues out there of leaking lagoons. And so there's some potential there in targeting and marketing to dairy producers in the Magic Valley as well to assist out there. So I don't know, we have the local led work group process. I'll just end by saying this. We have the locally led work group process, and it might be a good opportunity to get on the agenda for local led work group and just to let everyone know of this program and its awareness. We have a lot of new staff with NRCS and FSA as well that, a fact sheet maybe would be good to provide NRCS and FSA as the customers come in the door and just make that just a regular routine to provide them with that fact sheet when they're signing up for programs and such, and the availability of this loan program that you all are offering. And I'll stop there.
Okay, I think all of this is great discussion. It needs to continue because I don't believe we're going to make any great grandiose decisions today, but we probably need to consider thinking about, make sure it's on next month's agenda when we can be in person and talk more about it. But we probably need to move on our agenda to finish up some other items. Is there any closing comments anybody would like to say?
Well, Mr. Chairman, Kathy Romer, I would just like to, if we're going to continue the discussion, and I agree, what would we like to see staff and maybe the subcommittee come back with a couple points or something that we can.
We know that in the, I want to say next month or July or so, we usually look at our rates. We can look at those anytime. If the committee believes that our rates need to be looked at, then I think it'd be appropriate to come back to our next meeting and suggest those rates and come up with a motion that we can look at and do. So that would be one way we can move forward. And then as far as marketing goes, we could all think about maybe other ideas of how we might be able to do that more effectively. There's been some comments brought up about that today.
Yeah, I agree, but also I think to really drill down on the process too, because for the commission to make changes to the process in the rules, that is a process in and of itself. But so I would think that, and you know, I'm really fully supportive of things that could be brought back and have merit. So maybe really drill down on process as well.
Okay. Okay, well, that can be talked about too, for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Olson.
I'm going to need to leave the meeting, if I may be excused.
I guess. Okay.
All right.
Thanks, Eric.
Bye, Eric. Thank
Bye.
you for your work.
Since we still have a quorum, we can do that. Okay, any other comments? Would that work for you, Mr. Hobelheinrich?
Oh, yes, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry, I was finished. I was just listening to the comments. So yeah,
Okay.
Please proceed as you feel fit. So
Okay.
see.
Come forward next meeting with some suggestions on rates.
Yep,
Okay.
we can do that. Yep.
Okay. Wendy, does that sound like at least a place to start?
Yes.
Okay.
You all keep thinking and appreciate the conversation.
Okay. Okay, with that, moving down to item number 7. Mr. Traps, you're up.
Mr. Chair, we're
Yes, sir. Ma'am.
6 reports from commission.
Oh, yes. Any
Remember-
reports and commission staff?
Mr. Chair, I simply, I have a video conference that I've committed to be on at noon. So I'll be stepping off. If you want me back in, somebody can come get me.
Okay. Okay. Crystal, I believe I was supposed to do something this time, was I not?
Yes, sir. We have a few anniversaries within the agency.
Yes, I went back this morning to look for your message and I could not find it. I believe we have somewhat longevity awards.
Yes, sir, we do. We have 3, actually. Since Terry has to step off here shortly, I'll start with hers on your behalf. Terry, even though she is leaving us, this month marks her 10th year with the state. So this is her certificate for that. And she has it, and say what you would like to say, sir.
Thank you, Terry. Do you have a comment?
I would just caution you to be nice or I'll leave a month early.
Okay, okay.
No.
Well, thank you for all your dedication, Terry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Also, it's fortunate that she is with us by Zoom and her camera's on. Thank you, Rachel, because your 10-year anniversary is this month as well.
Oh, wait a minute, Rachel hasn't worked with us for us that long.
No, she's not worked for us that long, but she was previously with the tax commission. So she has put in her fair share of time with the state, and now we get to reap the rewards of her experience.
Thank you, Rachel, very much for your time. And please don't leave for a while. Our agency.
Oh, I won't.
Okay, thank
I
you.
already promised Crystal.
Okay,
She's
we all heard
promised
that.
me at least until she graduates her next degree, which is several years out. So.
Okay. We all heard that, Rachel, so thank you very much.
And last, sorry, Rachel, go ahead.
Oh, no, I forgot all about it. So thank you.
Last but not least, we have Bill's anniversary. And Bill, I will be mailing this to you tomorrow with the State House mail, so expect that. But Bill has been with the state for 25 years.
Oh my.
Bill, I did not check and see how many of those years were with us and how many of them were with your previous agency before the call started today. But thank you.
So 20 years with the commission.
Okay. Well, Bill, since I can't give you a handshake, at least pat yourself in the back. Thank you, Bill. Okay. That was it, right? Crystal?
Yes, Chairman, that was it.
Thank you very much for your assistance. It's kind of tough to do it by Zoom, long distance here, but it was all three of you. It's greatly appreciated. So don't give up now. You got some more years to go.
Did we want to, I'm sorry, I had to step out of the meeting for a moment or two to deal with some ITS issues. Did we backtrack so that Curtis could give a partner report? Did we want to do that now?
Well, he's been talking away. There's some other things that you want to quickly add, Curtis?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that would be greatly appreciated if that's okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, first of all, I just want to say a few comments for Terry Murison, and I just want to really extend my appreciation for Terry's assistance and working together and great partnership that she's provided, and the 6 years that I've known Terry and working together with her. I'm going to miss working with you, Terry. And it's been a privilege. It's been an honor working with you, and you will be missed. I know that. And thank you for all the support and all the assistance that you've given me personally, and also NRCS as well. So thank you so much, Terry, and wish you the very best. Also, would like to just give a short report here, Mr. Chairman, from NRCS. And I guess the biggest news that has hit the airwave as of this morning is that we have a new chief that has actually been, I guess, announced by President Biden. And our chief is Chief Terry Cosby is his name. He is the state conservationist from Ohio. And Terry used to be, or once about, I think around 18, 20 years ago now, he was a deputy state conservationist in Idaho. So he's very familiar with Idaho. He's a personal friend of mine as well, which is always helps, having a chief who's also a personal friend of yours. A great guy, 40 plus years of experience working with NRCS. So very knowledgeable, very experienced, just a really, really good man as well, who has his head on right and has a vision for the future for us as well, and is going to lead us in a very good way. So I'm very, very pleased that, that Terry was selected as our new chief. Also, we continue to exercise the COVID. I guess I need to talk about that a little bit too. We're still at a 50% capacity level in our field offices for COVID as far as staffing numbers go, and that districts are allowed in the offices and being part of that 50%. I want to make that perfectly clear as well. And that's also the commission employees and other partners that are assisting us with workloads and such. So you can be a part of our rotation 50%. Also, board meetings can happen within our offices now, providing that we're using exercising the 50 percentile during working hours. I know some boards have been asking us if they could hold board meetings in the evening. The answer is yes. And it's actually encouraged to hold board meetings in the evening or after hours so that the 50% threshold doesn't really apply as stringently. So there's that, and then mask wearing. If you're vaccinated, we no longer have to wear masks, except that when we're outside of the office. Then, you know, any states that still require masks, then we're being asked to wear masks outside the office. But while on federal property, if you're vaccinated, you no longer need to wear a mask. Customers are still encouraged to come into the offices, again, with that 50% threshold. That's the magic number, 50%. But that's about it for COVID. Budget, real quick, we got $19.5 million worth of environmental quality incentive program monies this year. And we asked for an additional $10.8 million in EQIP. And we got 3.3 million of the 10.8. So that put us at the 19.5 million. And then ASAP, ALE, we're at $3.3 million for that. CSP, 6.8 million. And then we're there, under the environmental quality CIC program, we're still waiting on funds for that. But that's about it in a nutshell. Other than we're hiring a lot of people. We're going to be at a full-time employee number of 170 staff when we're all done, which is, wow, you know, a number that we would have never thought we would be at. But we're looking at being at that number within the next 4 to 6 months. 170 staff. We're going to be at around 28 engineers in our state when we're all said and done. So that's encouraging to hear. A lot more technical assistance, a lot more boots on the ground. And 90% of these additional hires that we're looking to hire are going to be field-faced people, engineers, soil conservationists, agronomists. I'm looking at bringing on 3 additional agronomists as well for our state, several engineers, and a multitude of soil conservationists, resource conservationists, planners. We need more planners out there. So that's the encouraging news. Good news, I guess, is we're beefing up our team here in Idaho, and we're going to be able to provide additional assistances out there to our customers. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll, if there's any questions, I guess for me, I would welcome that.
Okay, does anybody have any questions for Mr. Elke? Hearing none, thank you very much, Curtis, and we welcome you to our meeting in Boise next month.
That would be great. And that's the other thing, Mr. Chairman, is now I can attend meetings of 50 or less people. But that's the magic number there, has to be 50 or less people for me to attend during working hours and on government time and expense.
we're somewhat popular, Mr. Elke, but I don't think 50 will be probably a problem.
Okay, great.
Okay?
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Okay, moving on then. Next items, item 7, Mr. Trutz, it's up to you.
All right, thank you, Chairman and Commissioners. I have a pretty brief report today on district support services, updating you on the outreach effort that we spoke about last month, where commission staff visited districts in an effort to find out what, if any, changes districts and district supervisors would like to see made to the way state funds, our trustee and benefits appropriation, is distributed to districts. I'd remind you that that effort was based on an interest in giving all districts the opportunity to voice their opinions, to provide their input and their suggestions. It was not, we did not initiate that because we were, as an agency, interested in putting forward legislation, only if we had been directed so by districts. As you can see from the handout that I distributed, we received 41 votes, formal actions by district boards that were reported to us. And of those, the one suggestion that received the greatest number of votes for being the preferred modification was the equal distribution of all trustee and benefits funds. And even though that was the highest, received the highest number of votes, still only 16 or 39% of the districts voted as that being their preference. At this point, based on these results, it is staff's recommendation that the commission not initiate agency-initiated legislation changes for the fiscal 2022 legislative session. Rather, we would encourage districts to continue the discussion amongst and between themselves at division meetings. And I visited with Benjamin last week about perhaps making it an item of discussion during the annual conference in November, so that districts can engage with one another and build a consensus for one or a combination of changes that they would like to see made. And then it would be up to districts working with their local legislators, with IACD leadership here during the session next year, to try to get legislation introduced and passed that would be in alignment with districts' consensus preferences in that, along that topic. Are there any questions on that trustee and benefits discussion?
You know, just a comment here. You know, we were kind of asked to do this review by a senator and a representative. I'm wondering if we need to kind of put this together in a formalized point and pass, you know, what the results of our survey was and the bottom line.
Chairman, I'll talk with Terry about that. I know that the meeting I was in on that you're referring to, the legislators, there was definitely their expectation that we would be providing updates on what was going on. So I'll visit with Terry on that and see if she has done any of that, and if not, I'll make sure that happens.
And then, you know, for that type of summary, then we'll say that since there's not a strong majority, we are not going to represent any type of legislative changes. It will have to be brought back by the individual districts and or ISCD board, but we do not feel like there's enough majority for any changes to be made.
That sounds like an accurate representation of where we're at with that, Chairman. Thank you.
So this is Kathy Romers. The question I have about Chairman Wright and Delvin. So hearing you say that that was the expectation of the legislators who somewhat commissioned us to do this, was it also their expectation that the agency wouldn't be taking the first step forward? It'd be kicked back to the association and the districts, to your knowledge?
To my knowledge, Commissioner, that was not the expectation. My understanding was that Terry would keep them apprised of, they were very curious to know what it was that districts wanted. When we went to them and said, districts want to change, my kind of through my filters, how I heard that was, how they responded to that was, that doesn't help us. What do you mean they want change? We want the details. We want specific suggestions, specific changes that we can introduce into legislation. And but I don't know that they expected us
to initiate.
Describe their expectation is the way the expectation that they actually laid on us. But I'm betting that Terry has a lot clearer picture about that and will be a lot more current on. I know she has communicated with them as time has gone on
Okay.
On some kind of.
Okay. Because I think it's important that the legislators who are involved in some of this understand that there is a difference between the agency and the association in terms of representation across the state of districts being, well, for lack of a better term, in control of their own destiny, so to speak. They have a means and a method to accomplish these kinds of changes through their association and their vote and their collaboration. And as you said, and I'm glad you talked with Benjamin, that I think that's very important. That's really the place where to initiate the changes legislatively belongs, is within the group themselves, correct? I mean, in terms of them wanting change that directly affect them.
That's correct. That's why they have the association, to be their voice. And
okay.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I thank you for the work you did, Dilwyn. I know I sat in on several of those, and I appreciate the districts responding. I think for the most part, they rose to the occasion, don't you?
Absolutely, Commissioner Romer, and it was a very worthwhile exercise. It was good to spend the time with those districts and supervisors. I really appreciated it, and I know Bill and the rest of the team that helped with that did a great job out there as well.
Yeah, and thank you for your efforts. So, okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, going on, Mr. Kraft.
Okay, the other thing that I had, and you know what, if it's okay with you, is an Eastern Idaho engineering hiring update. And what's not even mentioned on here was the rest of our staffing updates. And if it's okay with you, I'd like to turn it over to Bill to give you a quick update on where we're at for our water quality resource con position in Coeur d'Alene, as well as if anything's happening in the engineering position.
Go ahead, Bill.
Well, the news for North Idaho is we've made an offer, and we should be bringing someone on the first part of June for that position. The nice thing is Brad Shelton, who left us for NRCS, will be 2 desks down in the same office, so he will be there for a lot of support for that person. And they've NRCS is committed to help as they can with that training. The Eastern Idaho position, we've floated a couple announcements now and just having a hard time getting anyone. There's a pretty good shortage of engineers throughout, well, at least in our area now. I know I've talked to DEQ and Water Resources, and they're having the same problem, filling those positions. We did have, with our latest announcement, 1 person that appears to have the qualifications, so I'm doing some background checking the references before we decide if we want to extend the announcement or interview that person.
Okay. That's it, Bill.
Thanks, Bill. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
The next item I had was the distribution of the withheld trustee and benefits funds, which you'll remember that the governor's office informed us during your April meeting that we could go ahead and distribute those to districts. And we did distribute that final $116,317.40 of trustee benefit funds. Before the end of April, those funds were sent out to districts. Final item have is the district budget hearing in June. Districts have been informed of the budget hearing, which will be part of our June meeting. We are by statute required to provide notification of that 20 days prior to the hearing. So we got that notification out via constant contact, and districts are all aware of that. And that will be addressed during our June meeting. The only other thing I have is that, I am district support, so let me thank district representatives that have called in, Francis, Bob, and also say hello to Corey Ivy, who is with IDL, and she's going to be part of our field staff meeting next week. So she's going to be addressing our field staff on some IDL grant issues and topics of interest. So thank you guys for chiming in, and that's all I have, Chairman, unless anybody has any questions.
Is there any questions for Delwyn? Hearing none, let's move on to our minutes. Did I get a chance to look over April 15th minutes? If so, I'd like to accept a motion to approve those minutes. Commissioners?
Hi, this is Wendy. Sorry to hear cows in the background, but I can make that motion.
Thank you, Wendy. A second?
Jerry, I'll second it.
Thank you, Jerry. Any further question? Hearing none, all approved, say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you very much. Moving on to financial reports. Rachel, it's your turn.
Thank you, Chairman. Okay, well, first off, I'd like to apologize for getting these out with such late notice. I spent a week and a half in Tennessee, and the financial data wasn't available before I left, so I had to do it after I got back. So, starting with the memo, financial reports, the financial detail and fund summary for the month ended April 30th are enclosed, and we'll go over those here shortly. The budget blueprint, we'll actually go over that last. The Commission's fiscal year 22 appropriations bill was signed by Governor Little on March 19th. And you'll see in the blueprint that includes an additional $200,000 in the trustee and benefits fund. And funding to convert the TRS2 position to CREP manager position, which maintains our 17.75 FTP count. The commissioner honorariums, we're in good standing with that. With the little travel that's happening this last fiscal year, we've spent about 61% of the honorarium allocated for FY21 here as of the end of April. Are there any questions on the memo? All right. Hearing none, we'll go ahead and move on to the detailed financial report for April 30th. Excuse me, either allergies are getting to me or I caught something during my travels, so my voice isn't cooperating very well. So we'll start at the top left here under general fund, personnel expenditures. We've expended so far about $910,000 in general fund personnel, which comes out to about 77% of the expenditures budgeted for the year. Hold on a second. And I'll go over the personnel expenditures, the amount remaining here when we get to the financial summary here next. So we'll move on to the operating expenditures for general fund. We've expended about 65% of our expected operating expenditures in general fund for the year. And since we're getting close to the end of the fiscal year, since we've been, with the tentative financial stability due to COVID, we've been extremely conservative in our spending So we have deferred some necessary purchases throughout the fiscal year. So now that we're getting to the end of the fiscal year and we do have some funds left over, we are going to be addressing those and making those overdue purchases here before the end of June. Are there any questions so far on the general fund, personnel, or operating? Okay, I'll move on to trustee and benefits. As you can see, all of those funds have now been distributed. Any questions there? And then lastly, the top right there under the cash balances, if you'll note, received to date, that there's a top figure there of $1743. We actually received the payoff for the Franklin restitution case. So we shouldn't be receiving any further payments on that. That's now paid off. Any questions under general fund? Okay, so we'll move down. We still have a negative balance under the NIFWIF grant that has been processed. We're just waiting for the funds to come in now. Any questions there?
They're doing fine, Rachel. Just keep going.
Okay, I know, this is all exciting stuff. All right, professional services, that's relatively unchanged from last month, other than a little bit of adjustment with, I believe there was a portion of a refund that went into that account, but basically it's unchanged from last month. Under RCRDP, loan administration, personnel expenditures are similar to general fund at about 77% expended for the year. Operating expenditures are sitting at about 40% of what was budgeted for the year. Going over to the cash balances, received to date so far $681,000. And the balance sheet, the loans paid out, as Terry mentioned earlier, we did make a distribution, and another one will be pushed through here today and tomorrow. That's not reflected on this because it's the April statement, but that will be changing here next month. Any questions on RCRDP? All right, the revolving loan, DEQ, unchanged from last month. Any questions on the detail report? All right, moving on to the summary. Grab my notes. We'll talk a little bit about the general fund, personnel funds. On the top left, you'll notice there's about a $74,000 expected remaining balance. And this is reflecting through April 30th. So this is actually going to change now for a few reasons. That remaining balance is going to be affected by the fact that we just made a new hire in North Idaho. We will have 2 vacation payouts coming up out of that. And also per actions by the legislature and the governor's office, we needed to implement a couple equity pay increases, and we'll also be implementing a 2% increase in compensation for guidance from the legislature and governor's office. So overall, all those changes come out to about, it's just over about $24,000 that's going to be coming out of that remaining balance after all that is paid out. So you'll see some of that change next month, and the rest should be reflected in June. Are there any questions on that? Okay. And we'll go ahead and move over to the RCRDP loan administration. Personnel expenditures, expected remaining balance out of RCRDP is about $9,600. And the same applies to this remaining balance as it did for general fund. There will be some reduction in that due to vacation payouts and CEC increases. Any questions under personnel? All right, operating expenditures are sitting at about $137,000 under general fund expenditures, and another $53,000 projected. That's a rough projection. Like I said, we will be addressing some necessary items that need to be purchased here before the end of the year, but we likely will still have a good size remaining balance in that, just based on our conservative spending for the year. Under professional services, that's unchanged from last month. Our CRDP expenditures for operating funds at about $62,000, and the revolving loan is unchanged from last month. The trustee and benefit funds, as I mentioned already, that's all been distributed now. Any questions on the financial summary? All right.
Are you
So we
ready
can
for
move-
motion?
Yeah, if there's no questions on that, I recommend that the board approve the financial reports for the month ended April 30th of 2021.
Would someone like to make that motion?
I will so move, Mr. Chairman. Kathy Romer.
Thank you, Kathy. Do I have a second?
Second by Wendy.
Thank you, Wendy. Further question? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay. Moving on to item 10, proposed fiscal year 2022 budget blueprint. Ms. Menzik.
Okay, so first there is the two-page memorandum, which basically just details out in words the same thing you'll see in the budget blueprint, which are the last 2 pages of it. And again, like I said, I apologize for the late notice on this. What I'll do is go ahead and go through the chart version. If anybody wants to discuss anything in the memo or wants me to read any parts of that or go over any of that, just let me know. But like I said, it is essentially the same exact information you're going to see here in the chart version. So first of all, we've got the general fund budget blueprint. So this part here is just for the general fund. So this is going to reflect the FY22 appropriations bill. So for personnel under general fund, we've got $1.3 million in personnel. We were given $236,000 in operating, $1.4 million in trustee and benefits, for a total of $2,967,200 in appropriations for general fund. Budgeted, you'll see under personnel, $1.29 million. Operating expenditures expected at about $234,000 with a contingency of $2,400, and I'll talk about that in a little bit too, the contingency amount. District allocations, the base funding is still at $425,000. Our match funding is at $703,100, and our operating funding for district allocations is now at $300,000 for a total of $2,956,000 budgeted. Under the operating capital highlights, we're assuming the rent in the water center until December 2022 at $3,800 per month, and the remainder of the fiscal year at the increased rate per month of $38.58 after December. SWICAP expenses include the Controller's Office, the Attorney General's Office, and Treasurer's Office, estimated at $70,500 for the fiscal year. We're assuming that the appropriation amount for SWICAP is split between general fund and RCRDP. And carrying forward, we're assuming that the general fund pays about 95% of the NRCS desk space and federal IT support, and RCRDP pays 5%. We have a 1% operating contingency budgeted, which may increase with personnel or operating cost savings from dedicated funds. And I'd also like to mention, I should have put that in there, but we, due to the budget guidance when we submitted the FY22 budget request, we were not allowed to request any capital items unless they were essential, so no capital items were requested. But in the memo, I also did make sure to mention that we are experiencing some computer failures at this point, but we weren't allowed to put that capital item request in. So we have actually purchased a couple that are coming out of our operating funds for FY21, but going forward, we may need to purchase more in FY22, even though we don't have the capital appropriation. Are there any questions so far? All right. Under personnel highlights, we're assuming we're fully staffed in the general fund at 15.5 FTPs. And then all projected personnel costs fall within budget with approximately $10.6 thousand in contingency. So that's what I want to talk about, the contingency figure, which shows about $2,300. That does not include our salary savings. Next year, I'll make sure to put both of those figures in there. But the contingency is based off of our operating figure, it's 10% of our operating figure, but we also do have a buffer in our personnel expenditure fund. Now we're assuming some related administrative time at 13% and fiscal time at 12% that are related to the RCRDP fund. Now under trustee and benefits highlights, district allocations, the base funding includes the $8,500 statutory cap per district. The match funding includes a $50,000 statutory cap per district. And during the legislative process for the FY22 budget, additional appropriation of $200,000 for district distribution was also included in operating funding. Whereas prior to this, you would have seen the operating funding figure at $100,000. Now we're reflecting a $300,000 amount in there for distribution. And that's it for the general fund part of it. Are there any questions there? All right, we'll move on to the dedicated funds budget blueprint. We'll start at the top left, RCRDP. Our estimated approximate cash on hand as of the new fiscal year 22 will be about $7.5 million. The income expected over the year is about $894,000. Professional services, cash on hand at the beginning of the fiscal year will be about $29,600. with an expected income of around $50,000 during FY22. The revolving loan cash on hand will be about $27,500 with an expected income on average around $12,600. Again, we do expect that loan actually to DEQ to be paid off during FY22. Our budgeted expenditures for personnel under RCRDP is about $179,000 and about $163,000 on operating. The figures there show professional services operating spending authority of $30,000. The revolving loan operating expenditures at around $8,900 with a contingency held back of $21,000. So under the revenue highlights, the notes there underneath the charts, the approximate cash on hand as of 7/1/2021 is based on actual cash on hand at the end of April, including projected interest income for the remainder of the fiscal year. The estimated FY 2022 income includes earned interest on our current portfolio, which excludes our CRDP late interest, new loan activity, and early payoffs, and potential services to be provided throughout the year. And I'll clarify on that one a little bit. Excuse me. The potential services to be provided to DEQ isn't just for DEQ. We're looking at doing some soil testing in conjunction with DEQ and districts in the Magic Valley. Under operating highlights, we're assuming the interest income generated, our CRDP fund increases in FY22, but the income generated does not meet the appropriated spending authority. Again, as the same as we showed in the general fund budget blueprint, the SWICAP expenses include various other agencies estimated at $70,500, and these are allocated between general fund and our CRDP. We're assuming an amount roughly equivalent to 10% of loan officer salary and benefits charged to the state revolving fund to cover administrative costs, and the remainder is held in contingency to cover any late borrower payments if necessary. We're also assuming costs associated with meetings where our CRDP program or business conducted will be charged to our CRDP. And we're assuming a 2.25 FTP RCRDP and office staff located in the RCRDP loan fund under personnel. So that concludes the dedicated funds budget blueprint. Are there any questions here? And if anyone's had a chance to go over the memorandum, are there any questions there, or are there any parts you'd like me to go over? Okay, if there are no questions, I recommend that the board approve the FY 2022 budget blueprint.
Okay, board, you've heard Rachel's comments there. Do we have a proposal to approve the budget blueprint as presented?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the proposed fiscal year 2022 budget blueprint.
Thank you,
I'll second that.
Thank you, Wendy. We have a motion on the floor.
I heard a vote already.
Yeah, I did too. I don't know if that was a yay or nay. To approve the budget blueprint. Any further question? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Okay, that shows it end of our agenda. Our next meeting is in person on June 10th in Boise. So with that, hearing no further comment, we motion to adjourn.
I'll make that.
Thank you very much.
I'll second. I'll second.
Aye, 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 okay. Talk
Back
to you
to work,
soon.
Andy.
Thank you
Okay,
very
bye,
much.
thanks.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.